Hello YouTube, this is Matt and I'm bringing you, this will be just another drop in the bucket as this is not a single fountain pen review. Today we are reviewing kind of as a brand and how they perform on different sheets, TWSBI, and some of their different nibs, things from a fine to a medium to a broad. Just a reminder, most of them are clear in nature like this. And so you can see the workings of, what type of pen you have, how much ink you have left. You could show off a little bit with that. They're all pretty close. I don't do any of the ecos. I thought they were a little bit too small for my own taste. Many people enjoy the ecos though. Occasionally they do put out pens that look like this. This is my Draco Blood. I will not be filling it with the same ink today, but I will try it in all three of the different notebooks because it is inked up. It'll be a slightly different type of review. It'll be more based on one broad versus another, because this is a broad and I have one other pen with a broad currently. So one versus the other. Today's ink that we'll be writing with will be the Congirl, self-named Congirl, edited by a Diamine ink, and if you don't recall, heavy shimmer in it. The notebooks we'll be using, Lechturn 1917. This is a fairly common book. Lots of people love the paper. For the sake of my favorite one, we'll be putting down a couple lines in some Rhodia. I expect this to perform well because it always does. It's one of my favorite types of paper to write on. And lastly, one that I just got done using in my last live, the Karst, because it's new and I like it. So I will start with the Karst first. It's newest. I have no idea how this will perform with the TWSBIs, and since we're mostly reviewing the inks today and the nibs, primarily the nibs really of TWSBIs, we'll be trying it first on this, and I will have a second shot almost clearly down on the page that I'll be doing it, so it should look quite clear and a little bit over the shoulder type. But this is where we'll start. Today's show we have the 700 Iris RT vacuum. So the main thing TWSBI does for different colors, since the body is always clear, is their hardware, they make different colors. So most of it's anodized aluminum anymore. I think this is stainless steel or something like that they have anodized in a clever way to give it that rainbow effect. Includes the cap and cap band, all in the rainbow colors. Like I said, today we are using the Congirl's ink. This one I actually have inked, the rest will be dipped for this demonstration. And I'm going to start with the Karst paper. I'm going to write with all of them, including, but not in the Congirl, with the Draco Blood. And then I'll set it aside and I'll pick up the next one. But this is what the Karst notebooks look like, and this is dot grid paper. What's different about the Karst is it is stone paper. It is super velvety soft, and it is unique to write on. It holds ink for a long time. So let's start with VAC 700R, and this is in fine. That is why I'm starting with it. It is the finest nib I have for this. We don't really care for extra fine in this household. It's a little bit too fine for us. So to start with, it is pretty fine writing. No variation because these are all stainless steel nibs, very stiff. And as far as the amount of ink this is going to put out, and this will be a little bit on the drier side even than the others as well, especially being that this is an extra fine and it is just standardly inked. It is not going to be submerged like the others will be, but you still see this paper holds ink above it exceedingly long time. So it's actually kind of a downfall if you have to close the book in a hurry. Wouldn't recommend that. It'll stick to the next page. But it does leave you some very interesting colors on top, and I'm going to grade this about a 9. It is very smooth for a fine. One of the smoothest fine nibs I've written with. Finer than any of the Chinese pens. Even though these are produced in China, they are not what I would classify as the cheaper Chinese pens. They're not one of the major Chinese manufacturers. They're an American company, and I think they perform well for the, kind of entry-level price range that they are. Up next, this is actually going to be a broad demonstration. I am skipping around a bit. I could have gone to my medium. I'll just leave it out for now. Just using what I feel like grabbing. So this is a 580 Diamond. And this is broad. And once again, this is all Congirl that I'm dipping with here. And I'm just trying to make sure that the feed is properly submerged, not leaving too much excess on it so it doesn't just saturate the page. And you can see how much thicker that is in every direction. How much more ink it lays out here. There you go. And you see even that, even just me smudging it created a dent on the outside of it. And next we are going to go to the medium. This is on another 700, but I bought this back in the day before they came out with too much. At the time they didn't have the iris, but people love the 700 RTs. They're kind of like an entry-level workhorse grade pen, and they hold an exceptional amount of ink. The vac system works pretty well, and standard plastic feed. I love the mediums. I feel like they write smooth for the amount of ink provided. It's not going to saturate a normal page. If you have a drier writing ink, I think they work fairly well. R, and this is a medium. And you can see this is somewhere between the two. It looks similar to the fines, but it is definitely a little bit more ink. I believe these are all number 6 nibs as far as I'm aware. They're not number 5s or 4s on any of the others. Maybe if you have an Eco it would be different, but as far as I know, most TWSBIs use a number 6 nib. Just a little bit longer. If you have a small bottle, it's a little bit harder to fill. And you see right there, another key indication of the difference. Roughly the same amount of ink that I smudged and a much smaller pool at the end. And this is in particular a heavy shade shimmer ink. This is Congirl, extracted Diamine, again self-branded Congirl. They're out of Europe. Pretty much self-explanatory. A lot of violet shimmer in it. A lot of heavy shading when you use a lot in one area. So far, I will say I feel like the broad, I've had experience where my broad nibs have come out with a baby's bottom on it where it kind of skips on some of the downstroke. This did not. And again, this is on stone paper. This is one of several. I didn't expect anything to baby's bottom because this writes like velvet. Everything feels velvety soft. It really picks up every stroke. This last one is not going to be Congirl. It is, it's my 2 minutes to midnight. I'll come back, I'll put it in the description what it is. I can see it, but I can't. This is my Draco blood. Also in a broad. You can see it puts out a lot of ink, maybe the most. It's also filled normally, not dipped. There you go. On regular-ish paper, this kind of ink will feather a lot. and it is not feathering at all on this stone paper, which I like. That means it can take a heavy shading ink. That is what the 2 minutes to midnight does, is it shades from a dark blue to a black in the pooling areas, and it has done that very well. The ink in here, I hope it is showing up. I'll hold it up before I move to the next notebook for you, but it shades really dark within a line between blue to black. When you pull it out in a smudge, it's a little bit difficult to see, except for at the end where it pulls. Give me a go, no go. Alright, we're good. So you should be able to see all the inks. All of these really are 9s in this book. They all wrote really well. They all did really good. None of them skipped. I attribute a lot of this to the paper. The paper is really, really, really good paper. It does take a long time to dry, so I'm not going to close it just right now. I'm going to put it to the side and I'm going to move on. But that is some of the shade and shimmer, and you could probably see the Draco blood is really, really dark because it is 2 minutes to midnight. Once again, folks, this is the Lechturn 1917. I don't speak fluent German, and that is what this language is. So don't ask me to pronounce it correct. I'm American. I can choose to do that. I'm reviewing how all these nibs do on different paper. This is one of the most popular fountain pen grade papers and notebooks that you can buy. A lot of people don't care for it as much. It writes kind of a little bit rougher. It's a little bit grittier. It doesn't really produce the same amount of shade and shimmer as others. But people still do like it. And it comes in a lot of different sizes. It's popular. You could find it in stores. Like I said, I'll be starting with the 700R and Iris because it is the fine. And we'll get going with it. And this is the Girl ink, and it is heavily shaded and shimmered. This is a regular inked pen. We use the vacuum to fill it up so that it is writing its proper amounts. And you see right there, already way drier experience. It's already absorbed. This isn't very surprising. I knew this going in. I've used this paper before, and this is why, unless you're writing with a very flat ink, some people do. Some people don't like a lot of shade and shimmer. They like one color inks. They like to write and be able to close up their journal real quick. This lets you do that. That is one of the reasons why this is very popular. Just a quick example here. Hand out of the way. With a fine, we are experiencing zero feathering. Everything is looking good, and in no time at all, it still has a little bit. In another 10 seconds, it would have been completely dry. Very little smudge for literally about 5 seconds after I wrote. So overall, the experience with writing with a fine is a good quality. Being that these are very, very smooth nibs, I can already feel the texture of the page. And the harder you press on it, the more you'll feel. The lighter, you'll feel a little bit less, but it's still going to affect the amount of texture you feel while writing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Again, this is dipped. I dipped it in the Girl, but I did tap it several times. This is a medium. It is a little bit smoother. The lines are a little bit thicker. This is my favorite pen width, nib width, to write with. I don't like writing with fine very much. It's usually too sharp for me, although I will say the fine on this is rather acceptable. It's rather smooth. You can see right here already, same ink, putting out a lot more color. Had a lot more ink in it, put down a lot more ink. Now we're moving on to the broad. I'm going to dip it here, give it a little tap off to make sure nothing is errant on it, and this is going to be the 580. Add a little conniption here, hold on. That 580 Diamond. I knew it was Diamond, but I didn't know if it had an extra R or anything in it. Now the Diamond, introducing the ink systems that I'm not currently using, just because I just cleaned it out. I'll probably just wash off this nib so I could put whatever ink in it I want. This is a piston filler. So unlike the vac, which works with a forward pressed vac, you put the plunger all the way through and it creates vacuum at the end. You operate this knob down here and it moves this piston up and down to create the suction. So you move the piston all the way up, put it in the ink, and then you draw the piston back and it draws in the ink with you. And this is a broad nib. You see it has the widest, thickest lines. A lot of shade, a lot of shimmer in this already. It may have already been drying out. I'll give it another fair shake. There we go. Very close. With a fair amount of ink, it does shade a little bit better. It shades a little bit darker. But this paper is very dry paper. It absorbs very quick anything. So the type of shimmer and the type of shade you have is going to be much reduced because of that. Now, again, this is not the Converl ink. It is another broad. It is just stainless steel, but it is using a heavy shading ink. And it is also a broad as well. I do feel like this is a very, very wet broad though. Yes, it is a broad. So it's just so much difference, but it's there. This was a limited edition. I was very happy when I got this. It was a little bit of a premium compared to what these run. This was like 150, but again, very limited edition. There was a very small time frame that these were anywhere, and I got in at the tail end of it, but for the money, it was worth it. It's an acrylic, it's a custom color, it has an ink window, it's beautiful. And the TWSBI, instead of having the top jewel, it's kind of laser inscribed on the top of this cap, so a little bit subdued compared to the pattern, which is, I believe, what they were going for. 2 minutes. 2 minutes till midnight. Now, on lesser grade papers, this will feather, and in this, it is not feathering at all. It's beautiful. It's not feathering. It's not kind of leaking out. It's absolutely wonderful. It's picking up a lot more of the different shades, which I like. It seems to be picking up some of the I don't know, maybe more of the black shading to it. It looks different to me. It almost looks like it has a red tint, which is a little bit, like that's not what's in there at all, but for some reason it has that particular shading coming out in it right now. It didn't in the other one for sure. It was all blue black. This looks like it's coming up with a little bit of red in that. I only smudged with my finger down here, which is the only one that would have had purple, so you know, it's all on its own. And that goes to show you they all write different on every paper. It is impossible to tell what paper is going to come out like what until you start writing. So I'm going to hold this up so you could see the shade a little bit clearer. And I would say these all performed about the same except for the iris, which was a fine, was a little bit more challenging a writing experience. It had a lot more texture to it. But it was still smooth. It's just you could feel the texture of the page. So you could feel the texture of the page with a fine versus the medium or broad. Alright folks, this is the last sampling of the day. This is, again, we're starting with the 700R Iris because it is the fine. It is actually inked with this ink. And this is Calm Girl once again. And I would say my favorite for last, which is the Rhodia. I love Rhodia paper. It is super smooth like writing on glass. It makes all writing experiences, all nibs, feel absolutely beautiful. My experience so far with all Rhodia notebooks, including this one, they hold just the right amount of ink, just the right amount of time to shade and shimmer, to give all of your text written with a fountain pen of most nib variations, an absolutely beautiful finish. We'll see how it performs with these. We haven't done a full sampling of all of our pens yet, so you know, one at a time here, and we'll start with this. Very smooth. Fine. Once again, the lines are nice and fine. It's not feathering. It's not expanding in a spongy fashion. And I'm going to do the smudge test here. I'm going to put out a fair amount of ink for it to be fair to all the other tests. Now, it actually did kind of go through the page a little bit because I was putting a little bit too much attention in one area, but if you're not trying to absolutely work your way through a page, you won't. Just so happens I was trying for it. It smudged, it has a lot of color, it has some shimmer in there. It did what I expected, and I accidentally worked through the page, so that's all on me. Overall, the writing experience was very smooth. You wouldn't normally get that much ink in an area, so you won't have to worry about anything like I did there where it ghosted or bled through or you worked your way straight through a page. That is pretty hard to achieve. I just was trying to get enough ink down. I could see it absorbing a little bit, but yeah, we're trying things out here. So this is another 700. And this is plain. This is a medium nib. And put down a little bit of text here for the sake of it. My own personal writing experience is I love mediums. They write so smooth. They put down the right amount of ink on good paper. On regular 20-pound paper, it does ghost a little bit. It doesn't bleed, but it does ghost, so you can only write on one side. But overall, I love writing with a medium. That's why I bought my workhorse in a medium, because I always like writing with it. I've actually used it on normal paper, but with a very, very dry ink, and I was able to do so for a long time. It was a nice relief. The shading came out a lot lighter, and that is a result of, this page. I think this is actually a cream as opposed to a very white, which they do make. They make both. This particular one is a cream, so that is a little bit of variation in this test, but the page texture and the feel of it, super, super smooth, sealed, very nice. Now, shimmer on all inks, all pages, doesn't show up right away. And I will show you an example on the stone paper at the end, just as to what happened, as the shimmering didn't quite show up beautifully last time when I was writing in the stone paper, but it came out very different after it dried. So back to the 580 Diamond. This is a broad nib. Yeah, this is Calm Girls. And I'm going to put down some nice thick lines because that's what broads do. Nice and juicy, lots of ink on the page. Make sure it's fair when I go into the ink testing. Oh, beautiful. You can see there it has put down enough ink to pool at the end, so it is going to shade pretty dark. It is very nice. And last but not least, I'm going to do the Draco Blood. And this is not Calm Girl. I'll write it in the description what this is. This is a broad nib. And it does put down a very, very smooth, just like the other, maybe a tad smoother because this was limited edition. A little bit drier ink compared to the others actually. But there we go. It did shade very nice in blue-black on this. There you have it, folks. My personal favorite for all of these is still the Rhodia paper. It performed the best with these pens. If you are looking to write a lot of words, having a fine nib will help. It will lay down less ink. You could use it on more paper choices. That way you're not using the world's most expensive notebooks. You can get fine on any of the TWSBI pens. You're not limited to the 700. You can get it in the Ecos, any of them. And for that matter, this is one of my favorite companies to get started with it. And still, I have so many pens, and yet these are beautiful pens to write with. They are a pleasure. They're lightweight. You can see your ink level, so you can enjoy the color while you're writing with it. It's a whole different level. They also offer a number of ink wells. They actually have their own customized ink wells that the thread system that they use. When you buy the advanced ink wells, you can thread it into the ink well, tip the ink so gravity is pulling down as you ink it for the world's most superior inking system. Now, no other pen, well, very few other pen companies have anything close to that, except for like a $70 specific travel system. They offer it for just their slightly advanced ink wells, and I appreciate that. A lot of their inks are a little bit flatter in color, but that's not to say that they aren't worth having. Sometimes you just like a flat color. When you're writing with a fine, you're not always going to get that much shade and shimmer. So a flat ink with a fine nib is beautiful. It writes the exact color you think it will. It's going to not have a lot of mess to it to clean up. It's not going to get a lot of clot in it from anything. So overall, The fine, you can feel the texture with, regardless of what you're writing. You'll know exactly how smooth your page is, and if there's anything underneath that is textured or bumpy. With the medium, this is my favorite writing experience, always. I enjoy writing with every pen I've written with, any medium. Mediums are my favorite nib width to write with. That's just how I feel. Many people like extra fine, many people like fine. Some people love writing with a very wet broad. It's, it all depends on what ink, what paper, what look you're looking for. What is the purpose of what you're writing? Are you writing an invitation where the lines need to be thick and bold and full of color for an event that is very meaningful, whether it's a wedding, whether it's some kind of other special ceremony that's religious, anything. Sometimes writing with a bold is what is required. When it is not, and you're just writing to write a lot of words, I enjoy writing with the mediums the most. Even as opposed to a fine that would put down less ink, I enjoy having the little bit more ink for the smoother, more surface area on a medium. And like I said, when you want that more ink, when you want shade and shimmer, when you can afford to use that much area, broads write beautifully and they are super smooth. You do have to watch out for baby's bottom. That is something, but TWSBI doesn't have too much problem with that. I've had some baby's bottom, but it depends on your page. With Rhodia, with better papers, you don't get it as much, especially when it's really flat onto a table. It writes wonderfully. That's it. That is it. And my favorite one for this is the medium.